Late-night explosions rock Venezuela's capital. Chaos in the streets. A world leader suddenly captured and flown out of the country. Today, the U.S. launches military strikes on Venezuela, claiming to have apprehended President Nicolás Maduro. Governments around the globe are reacting, and the world watches in shock. What really happened, and how deep could this crisis go? Let's break it down. In the early hours of January 3, 2026, Venezuela's capital of Caracas was shaken by a series of powerful explosions, sending shockwaves across Latin America and setting off one of the most dramatic escalations between the United States and a sovereign nation in decades. Soon after reports surfaced of smoke and blasts near major military bases and airports, U.S. President Donald Trump announced a large-scale American military operation against Venezuela, claiming that President Nicolás Maduro and his wife had been captured and flown out of the country. Reuters. This incident represents a major test of international law, military strategy, and geopolitical balance in the Western Hemisphere. Today we explore what happened in Venezuela, why it happened, and what it could mean for global peace and stability. Explosions in Caracas. Shortly before dawn on Saturday, multiple explosions were reported across the Venezuelan capital, including near La Carlota Air Base and other strategic locations. Witnesses described deafening blasts and low-flying aircraft in the early morning sky, prompting power outages and widespread fear among residents. Videos from the scene showed plumes of smoke rising over Caracas as residents fled and emergency sirens blared. The strikes reportedly lasted around 30 minutes and primarily targeted military installations and infrastructure. The Venezuelan government, in response, declared a state of national emergency and vowed to resist what it termed foreign aggression. The U.S. claims Maduro captured. Shortly after the explosions, U.S. President Donald Trump took to social media to announce that the United States had successfully carried out a large-scale military strike against Venezuela. According to Trump, Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro and his wife Celia Flores were captured and flown out of the country by U.S. forces, an extraordinary claim that marks a dramatic turn in U.S.-Venezuela relations. Maduro and Flores were reportedly taken to face criminal charges, including allegations of narco-terrorism and drug trafficking, in U.S. courts. This operation, Trump claimed, was conducted in conjunction with U.S. law enforcement and elite military units, including Delta Force. How did it escalate to this? Tensions between the U.S. and Venezuela didn't emerge overnight. For months, the Trump administration had stepped up pressure against Maduro's government, accusing it of supporting narcotics trafficking, corruption, and destabilizing activities in the region. The U.S. had previously seized suspect oil tankers, struck alleged drug smuggling vessels in the Caribbean, and placed sanctions on key members of Venezuela's leadership. The U.S. government has maintained a long-standing indictment against Maduro and others, alleging involvement in narco-terrorism and drug importation conspiracies. At the same time, Maduro's government has denied all accusations and condemned U.S. actions as imperialist aggression. Barron's, this military escalation comes after months of threats by Washington to take more drastic action if Maduro did not step down or surrender power peacefully. What U.S. officials are saying, according to U.S. sources and political figures, this operation was designed to pressure the Maduro regime into accountability while attempting to avoid large-scale civilian harm. A U.S. senator claimed that Secretary of State Marco Rubio had indicated Maduro would now face trial in the U.S., and that no further immediate military actions were expected. Barron's, the Trump administration described this mission as smart and operationally successful, asserting that justice would finally catch up with a leader who had long been accused of corruption and criminal activities. Venezuelan government response. In stark contrast, Venezuela's government rejected the U.S. operation as unlawful military aggression. President Maduro's representatives described the strike as a violation of Venezuelan sovereignty and demanded proof of life for both Maduro and his wife. Vice President Delcy Rodriguez publicly stated that the whereabouts of the leaders remained uncertain and called the U.S. actions a crime against the Venezuelan people. Following the explosions and the state of emergency declaration, the Venezuelan defense minister announced mobilization of the armed forces, urging citizens to resist foreign intervention. Global reactions. The international community's response was swift and mixed. Russia and Iran strongly condemned the U.S. strikes, calling them violations of international law and imperialist acts that jeopardize global stability. Officials urged diplomatic solutions and respect for Venezuelan sovereignty. Reuters, Latin American governments also voiced concern, with some emphasizing dialogue over military action. Mexico and Uruguay explicitly rejected the use of force, reaffirming the need for peaceful resolution and non-intervention. What this means for Venezuela. If confirmed, the capture of Nicolás Maduro, one of Latin America's most controversial leaders, would have significant implications. Venezuela would face a political vacuum, with its leadership in turmoil and no clear successor in place. The state of emergency gives the interim government broad powers, potentially affecting civil liberties and mobilization efforts. Is this a turning point? This operation could mark a pivotal moment in U.S.-Latin America relations. For decades, U.S. influence in Latin America has waxed and waned, from the Cold War-era interventions to more recent diplomatic approaches. Now, a direct military strike and capture of a sitting president, whether justified or condemned, sets a new precedent. It raises serious questions about international norms, sovereignty, and the use of force without clear United Nations authorization. As the situation continues to develop, President Trump is expected to hold a press conference with detailed updates. The United Nations Security Council may convene for urgent discussions. Venezuelan citizens and diaspora communities are likely to organize protests and demand clarity. Global markets may react, particularly in the oil sector, as Venezuela's energy output has been a key factor in regional economics. The world remains on edge, awaiting confirmation from independent sources about Maduro's status and the full scale of military operations. What we are witnessing today is more than just a regional crisis. This could be a world historical moment that reshapes alliances, tests international law, and alters the political landscape of the Americas. Did the United States act in legitimate self-defense? Was this intervention justified or overreach? And what will become of Venezuela's people and institutions in the days